Welcome to Misaka, a podcast where we look at life as a series of smaller lives. We call these smaller lives Misakas. In this episode, David and I look at our past to try to identify as many of these Misakas as we can and share them with you guys. Enjoy. I think it'd be beneficial for us to, since we've discussed the concept up to this point and we've talked about
who we are,
our background, this would be a good one to sort of dig into our lives and classify as many Misakas as we can sort of find in ourselves in our past. So we have the theoretical explanation, the intro into us, and then now digging through like Misakas that we found in our lives so people can have like concrete examples of them.
That's good.
But I also wanted to talk about what happens when we die as well. So,
but
I think one would make sense first.
Yeah, I
before
agree.
The other.
Yeah, there's never any limit to content.
No,
in an hour.
True.
Okay. Do you want to go first?
It's
a bad way of saying
You want to just do like I think of one and then you think of one and then I think of one and then you think of one.
Yeah, like a seesaw.
Yeah, and we'll sort of go back and forth.
Perfect.
Okay. I'll go through like my most recent one that I've been able to apply this to the most, and that's my past year. So 2018. Before the Misaka concept, I would theme my years, and so each year would have a purpose, and it allowed me to sort of add value to a regular day. So if like I didn't really get anything accomplished that day, as long as what I did do attributed to my year goal, it gave it a little more weight. So my 2018 was responsibility, and I think that was at that point in my life the first time I think I did it subconsciously, but I was able to create a Misaka when I wanted it, not when I needed it. And I would do like really discipline-oriented things, like make my bed every day. I made a rule where I had to sweat 5 days a week, so I was like basically every day during the week. I experimented with a lot of different diet stuff, like no bread, no dairy, intermittent fasting. Basically doing sort of like discipline experiments in order to increase my response. So just in a way to improve myself, obviously. And I guess it spawned from, I don't think I've been very responsible in my life in general, like historically not very responsible. So I think it was a reaction.
Give us an
to
example.
that.
What's an example of being irresponsible for you?
I barely graduated high school. I missed like 100 days. Did a lot of drugs. Just all the things that you're supposed to do to build yourself up in the world. I was just like, fuck that. I'm gonna turn the opposite direction. And that's been most of my life. And I went to college really because I wanted to show my parents that I wasn't that person. And I found once I started like getting good grades and like applying myself and following topics that I was interested in, it made me feel good. And it's one of those things where I say out loud, like I wish someone would have told me that earlier, but I wouldn't have listened to them. So I had to get there on my own. And that's always sort of been my thing, is I like the conventional wisdom. I say like, fuck it until I stumble my way into it. And then I'm like, oh, that thing that people have been telling me, or like, oh, that cliche, like, oh, that makes so much sense now. So it spawned from this slow evolution. So I guess maybe it was born then when I went to college, this responsibility Misaka. Because it's when I started to feel that doing the thing, not necessarily that you're supposed to, but that benefits you the most, even if it's not the easiest thing to do. Getting your grades, showing up. For a long time, I made a rule where I had to do everything I said I was going to do. Just things like that, like basic unwritten rules, like discipline-oriented things. It brings you a lot of value, and it immensely builds your confidence. And I think that started the spiral of when that Misaka started to grow. And I guess last year when I acknowledged it in my life as something I was going to specifically work towards would probably be the adulthood phase of it, actually, more than the birth. So I guess I didn't make it on my own. But so it was born out of this necessity to sort of make up to my parents for all the shit that I put them through in the past of just being a fucking wild and crazy kid. And through its I'll call it adolescence, I found how much value I could get, how much confidence it built, how much more productive, and really how much more control it discipline lessened anxiety a lot. It lessened sort of my like existential dread and sort of nihilistic tendencies of like what the fuck is everything, because it forces structure on you and it forces structure on yourself. So that's I guess the most recent one, and its lifespan would be around 2011 till now, and I think that last year was when it hit adulthood. I don't know when it's going to die or repurpose into another form, but that's sort of where it is now. So I'm now in, I think, I have an adult responsibility, Misaka, that I can really pull into anything that I need it, or I can say like, it's been built up enough that it can do things for me now. I don't have to do things for it.
What's an example of an application of the responsibility, Misaka, for you? Like most recent, do you think?
Let's see.
So let's say outside of work or outside of work.
Outside of work or work.
Yeah, between work and work. Outside of that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good example rather than just an example.
Because I guess the reason why I say it too is one of the more functional parts of the concept is that once you've tracked the history of your Misaka and have delineated a path and how that path has started and formed and gotten close to the end or ended, you start being able to apply it freely, and it's like you said, it becomes a little task engine.
Yeah,
like it starts doing work for you.
Yeah,
which is also a strange way to think about a concept in certain ways, because I mean, again, it's if I'm viewing my process and thinking, it makes sense that if I've created a habit of thinking a certain way, that would be like a different cog that I could add to this larger machinery of the way that I think and stuff.
Yeah. And I think that so I guess I think a good example of it would be, so this year, I just from life and things, I found that I was tired a lot. So I created a goal in myself of like, what can I do to have more energy or be less tired? And I think the responsibility Misaka came into play when it was like, let's look at diets or different things I can do with my eating, and maybe that will provide more energy to me. So I tried, again, no bread and no dairy for a month. And because of it was in its adult phase, I think I had enough, I'd worked that muscle enough to where I could actually go through with these things and get to the end of the month and then critique or look back and see like, do I have more energy? How does this make me feel? And then I would tweak, okay, maybe I'll add in some dairy and see with the bread, and then see like how I could have the most enjoyment and the most energy and sort of the most benefits of that. Recently I've been experimenting with intermittent fasting where I'll only eat for 8 hours a day. And the thing with that is, when we were sort of tribal hunter-gatherers, we didn't eat consistent 3 meals a day. So our bodies have evolved to suit that lifestyle, to work off of that, not having consistent meals or big feasts and then not food for a while. So I've been doing only eating from noon to 8 p.m. during the week. And I've actually found that my brain has been functioning better from that, which is strange. There's something in like scarcity and not having food right in the morning, because I've always been sort of a night afternoon person, and having that, like, your body's hungry, I feel like it sort of puts it into overdrive, so it starts working harder, and it's actually given me some more cognitive ability in the morning and some more energy in the morning, which seems counterintuitive of not eating in the morning. Yeah, but it's made me have more energy, be able to wake up quicker and think a little faster.
That's sorry. That is surprising because at least for me, it's completely the opposite, in that I have to eat consistently, and if I like intermittent fasting, this is the idea again that every diet suits someone individually, which I think is something that's weirdly overlooked and like under researched, where people like this is the diet for everybody, which is then how you market an idea.
Yeah.
But like I came up with just in this moment the potato principle, which is a very I guess Russian. I don't know what other parts of the world are really heavy on potatoes. Irish. There we go. A very Irish way of saying that a potato a day keeps being angry for absolutely no reason away. I discovered my secret was potatoes. That was my dieting secret was just
like having something there. That's really what a potato is.
I don't like have it there symbolically.
no. Like nutritionally, it's just like having something there.
Yeah. It's also that it's a complex carbohydrate, so the energy you get from complex carbs lasts you longer. And for me, if I eat like 3 potatoes, life becomes less about I feel like I'm just surviving.
Yeah.
But just
here's the thing though, that and I think this is really where the I guess I'm keep calling it the responsibility Misaka, but it's sounding more and more like the discipline Misaka that I'm discussing right now. So we'll call it the discipline Misaka. When I first started doing it, it didn't give me any benefit. It was when my body got used to the pattern.
Yeah.
That's when I started getting more energy and having a more clear brain in the morning. When I like the first 7 days, the first 6 days, it wasn't like that. I was groggy and hungry, and I was like, "Fuck, I really want to eat." And that's where my brain was more focused on, is I want to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And then once my body became acclimated to it over the past, I've probably been doing it for almost a month now. That's when I started seeing benefits from it. So it's through the discipline of doing it that I got the benefit, rather than the act of what I was doing.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Well, that also lies in maybe like one of the first frustrations of building a Misaka, and that, or like the frustrations of raising a child, and that it's still putty, where you look at it and you're like, it's not getting, I don't know, it's not appraised yet,
Just shit its pants.
Yeah, exactly. Like this thing is virtually, it's closer to death than it is to life, it feels like.
That's such a dark way to describe what a baby is.
Well, I mean,
I love it. No, I love it.
Yeah, it's
a baby closer to death than it is to life. Yes,
buy one now. I mean, it's because it's fragile, and because it's new to the world, and because its body is even learning how to do its basic processes.
Yeah. But on the spectrum of life, birth, and death, it's closer to
exactly.
Yeah.
But I think it's the same way with building a Misaka, where you start, and it's difficult to see. I think also we should talk about the creator's curse as a part of this, and that it's difficult to track your progress through something, even with building a Misaka, if you're improving throughout the process. Because each time that you check back at where you're at, you don't necessarily know that you've improved unless you've looked back. So it's like you might have improved a lot, and you're like, I'm still really bad at what I'm doing. And you're like, well, yeah, again, memory serves me, so I can look back and say. So that's one of the helpful things about Misakas, is that you're able to be like, okay, this is like a very well tracked out, like, here are how the habits have changed. Here are how the concepts have leapfrogged off of each other through time. I know that I've improved. Yeah. Because that's also challenging.
With the Misaka, too, it's not just... It makes it even more specific. It puts you on a track. So it's not just saying, like, have I improved? It's saying, has this specific part of me improved? And that's why I like the Misaka thing so much. Because it's not just... You're not just looking at the general vagueness of, like, am I better?
Yes.
It has this really specific thing that I'm paying attention to. Is that getting better? So it's really good. It's like what you do when you set goals, right? In business, they always say, like, chunkate and make really small steps so it's more achievable. And that's like it's making the you into a bunch of different chunks that you can follow more easily. If the ultimate goal is self-improvement for you,
yes,
you chunkate that goal into all these little Misakas that are all improving at the same time. Yeah, and so going back to sort of the baby piece of it, looking back sort of when this now called the Discipline Misaka was born, it first started with really simple things. Like my first sort of rules that I put in place were, if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And just showing up. So just sort of those two really simple things. And it's not that they were easy to do, but as a rule, they're very simple. Right? It's just like it made it a binary.
Yeah.
Or I'm either doing it or I'm not.
Yeah.
So there isn't like a varying degree of like, did I do it enough? It was either I was doing it or I didn't. And that was a really helpful way to start it, because I was either on or off. I was doing it or I wasn't. And that slowly, like, doing things with diet or food or stopping smoking or all these different things that are more difficult or more addicted or more biological needs are more difficult to do in the end. So that's sort of why they came farther along.
Yeah. Well, I will say also that your approach of simplifying like your motivations to just basic axioms, like showing up, and if you say you're going to do it, reminds me vaguely of this idea of time management, where you segment your time into blocks, and then you segment those blocks into such small pieces that it becomes like impossible not to achieve one of those tasks in a given set of time.
Yeah, it's the same thing as segmenting big goals into little pieces.
Exactly.
Segmenting
myself into many Misakas.
Yeah.
Another reference to things.
So what would be an example of time management? Then you put it into blocks. Like, so like what's a sub segment? Like, what does that look like?
So imagine that.
Relatable example coming up, guys.
Okay. Imagine. I'm getting snatched for it. Okay, that was a part of it. Well, the one that is easiest for me to recall that I've done for myself is, you say, and this sounds like a sad goal, but it honestly is helpful. You make one of your blocks, I got up in the morning. If that's too hard.
What's the bigger block that's a part of then?
We'll get
like I want to see it, like each segment.
Okay, so my bigger block is making it to a job interview on time.
Okay.
Job interview's at like 9:00.
Okay.
Right, and what I do is I separate that into blocks of do my morning hygiene, get like mentally prepared, get physically prepared, jerk off.
Physically prepared. That's actually physically and mentally prepared.
I think so too.
Yeah.
It's self-maintenancing.
Yeah.
So that's good. Subset of those, jerk off.
Okay.
Okay,
that makes sense. And then even getting up, like waking up is getting out of bed. Those
and
are all
you keep
things.
reducing it. So you say, if part of me getting physically and I guess mentally prepared is, do I get up? And if getting up is too difficult of a thing to just check off, then you say, boxes, man. If checking off is too hard, then you say, I open my eyes.
Got it. So it's things that you were going to do anyways, and how that fits into what you need to get done.
Yep.
So that you're, even by like being alive, you're checking things off that you needed to do for the day.
So you get in a process of completing tasks by being aware of the things that you're already doing.
I think many self-help books that I've looked at or seen it's tracking your small victories rather than your big ones. And that's the easiest way to build confidence, is to achieve a bunch of little things rather than shoot for one big thing. Just because it's more like, it gets you in a momentum of like, oh yeah, I can do this. Yep. Oh yeah, it is going to be okay. That's a confidence building tool that people use. Interesting. All right, Misaka meeting.
I'm a Misaka, man. I keep on thinking about reaching for these Cheetos. I'm not going
to.
Cheetos. I'm not going to. Cheeto fingered. Okay. Oh my god, how did the fucking references become
so many loops.
Okay. I see. It's difficult because I either want to bring up the experience of the balance Misaka.
We're going to go back and forth, so you can do both.
Oh, we're going to go for
just
it.
Pick one.
Okay.
Which one is either more recent or came first? Okay.
I'm gonna do experience. Okay. All right. Spent a great deal of time, I mentioned this in the last podcast, dwelling in a small room and then dwelling in a smaller and arguably a much larger room in my head. And that was the experience I wanted to have. So I was having experience by doing that, but also I viewed my like internal world qualia as being experience. So the experience points that I was amassing for the majority of my starting period of life and my young period of life and my I'm still young and my older young period of my life up until I was about 18 was surely in my head. Now I had a lot of experiences and I reflected a lot, and I used to write a lot even when I was young, and I would tell stories even when I was young, but those experiences I was having I was kind of being handheld into. And also you have that weird relatable experience. You have that weird ritual encounter of writable people, of short stories, where you walk into a Raymond Carver short story as a kid. Okay, I do. Stop using second person. Not everybody's had this experience. When I was younger, I would go to places that always would stick with me. And they'd always be like dens, basements, so many basements, random clearings in the woods that I was brought to.
This sounds real rapey. Right? Who's bringing you to basements and clearings in the woods?
No.
Why is that happening?
Priest dens, Catholic sanctuaries. Kidding. Tube skirt birthday parties. Just kidding. This is becoming just a terrible game of Mad Libs.
Now we're at the part of the podcast where I'm too curious about your life to actually do what our goal is. So
okay.
You said you were brought to.
I'm making this my shtick. I need to stop.
Basements and clearings in the woods.
That was probably too artsy of a way to say that I spent a lot of time in basements that other people lived in the basements of churches. Fuck, I'm not. Holy shit. Okay.
I'm like scared to even follow this one.
No, okay.
I feel like I'm gonna unlock some like repressed memory that you have, and you're gonna start crying.
So okay. Zero rape themes here, folks.
Okay. Just
title card.
Not rape themes, just rape coincidences.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to say no rape themes. There was plenty of okay. Oh god, I'm not making a good case for it not being rapey. It really wasn't. These were good people. Fuck, I'm just convincing myself.
I'm like really scared of what door we just opened here.
No door.
Okay.
So there was a guy in this holy. My mother had friends who she'd see every now and then, and some of them lived in basements. Those are the ones I remember the most because I like dark, dingy places. They're aesthetically pleasing to me. I like the smell of dinge and mold, mildew. I like the smell of that.
I mean, you did live in a basement before we met.
Yeah, that is true. Again, we had the option to pick up here and still chose down there because I like it. The claustromania, where you love small spaces, which is not coincidence.
Is that what the opposite of phobia is? It'd be the same preface and then mania instead of phobia?
I believe so. Okay. I think that works. Out of the classroom.
It sounds right, so we'll just say it's true.
Oh, it's true.
Okay.
Because it's right. Okay. So would just remember those places the most and would have like very rich but mundane experiences where I would go to like someone's basement and they would just sit and watch movies and smoke cigarettes perpetually, and they would talk and banter about the things they would banter about, and I would be a kid and I would be there and I would enjoy it in my own way. Or church basements because AA. And if you know anything about AA, podcasting world,
those both feel like the opposite things were happening in those basements. Like one was for AA and then one was for some dingy man not in AA.
He definitely was not in AA. Yeah. But I spent a lot of time in spaces that also like reinforced reinforced small living, being in your head, still having that experience of not necessarily exploring geographically, though I did explore geographically.
It's having a physical experience in the smallest place possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like a really, if I was doing it intentionally as a kid, it was a great way to bargain with, I don't know, an experienced genie who, terrible metaphor. Anyways, that was the case for a long time. And I don't think I actually started building my Misaka podcast. This is what this is about. I don't think I actually started building my experience Misaka until I was about 18. When I met a friend who shall go unnamed still for sake of anonymity, which was unnecessary to say. This is going really well. And I started spending a lot of time with him and finding that I could use the internal experience to explore actual outside of myself experience. But to be honest with you,
so you can use the internal experience to explore the experience outside of you?
Maybe a better way to say it, a way that makes sense at all, would be...
when you say the internal experience, this is just you having experiences in your head instead of doing them in the world.
No, I could already do that very well.
Okay.
What I mean is that
That's
I found reasons. It was originally.
Okay.
I found reasons to explore my world through the uncovering of my internal experience. So let me elaborate on that even further in a way that might make more sense. I spent a lot of time in my head, and then I began to find that if I explored the world physically, that I might be able to add more to my internal experience.
Okay. So you're like, let's say you're coding a video game, a forest.
Yeah.
Going outside into a forest gives you more sprites and things to use inside the video game world.
It's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Spot on. Okay. So that experience, but I didn't really follow through with that a ton. I still spent a lot of time in my head.
What was the first one you can remember of like when you like did the actual experience and you're like, oh, there is value to this?
Okay.
If you can't, we can move past it, but I'm just curious.
Okay, actually, here's a good one.
Yeah.
And this one may be also comfort zone Misaka, but I think that the best way to describe it is the experience one. Turns out I could force myself to go on stage and do stand-up comedy / storytelling. And I remember the first time going on stage and wearing a tiny bow tie. I'm kidding. But going on...
with all your stories, I'm like, oh, okay, of course, you wore a tiny bow tie, yeah. Like, that didn't even faze me.
Yeah, he had a literal...
That wasn't even so weird that I had to ask a question. I was just like, oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
He drove he had a mannequin with him.
Uh-huh.
So, I remember going on stage and it was in front of like 50 people or so.
Was it in a basement?
You know, oddly enough, it wasn't.
Okay.
I was at the top floor of a place, actually. Maybe that's where experiences happen.
At the top floor?
Yeah. And so I go to this top floor and there's this stage and it's in this bar / restaurant place and they have this storytelling event that passes through. But it's mainly just basically an open mic. And I went on stage and had no material. I remember being in that moment and thinking, you could plan something, reason says. And then I remember thinking to myself, how? Maybe not.
Did you go to this event to go on stage, or did you go to watch it and then just like decided like I'm going to do it?
I went on stage. I went on stage to listen. No, I went there to listen.
Okay. So an impromptu decided as it was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
With no material.
Not at all.
And having lived most of your life experiencing things in your head.
With material.
Okay.
Yeah. And go on stage, and I start talking about what it's like to have a parent who reads tarot cards and how that ruins relationships. So the bits weren't that funny. They were mostly sad, which is a mistake I make. I think that the sad things I've experienced are really funny, and then I'm like, come on, guys. And they're like, why are we reading Kafka right now? Kafka's not funny. But I argue that Kafka is funny.
What do you think What do you think that's about? Thinking that, like, is that something you?
I'm sure, and as I've said before in earlier podcasts, in a very quote unquote Psych 101 sense, it's a way to deal with it.
Okay.
But frankly, I think that these really sad, stumbling errors of being a human are really funny. It's like slapstick, but in terms of being alive.
Yeah.
You slapstick yourself out of the womb, and then you just slapstick everywhere.
Yeah.
So I started talking about the experience of that happening and how, like, you bring a girl home, how I would bring a girlfriend home, and how immediately our future together would be spoiled by the parent who could tell our future. So it would be like, oh, it's going to be great. Look, like, I know that we're young and fucking ridden with acne and we're already terribly insecure, but I promise you, hearing from somebody else exactly how our relationship is going to plan out, it's going to just flying colors. It's going to go great. And then, the parent would say, well, you can expect a pregnancy in the next 6 months. Just like fucking no doubt, pure. And then I shared that, and they groaned, and I was like, "Fuck, this is not stand-up comedy. This is becoming too real." So then I started doing impressions to save my ass.
Stand-up tragedy is what you're doing instead.
Stand-up tragedy. So I started doing impressions, and the impressions go great. They're like, "Oh, great!" They're laughing and whatever, as you would want from doing stand-up. But then I start finding myself pulling back a little bit from wanting to make this crowd laugh. And I start telling them this sincere story about delusions of fate that we're all searching for. And that when you go to a palm reader, when you go to a fortune teller, when you try to read fortune telling yourself, when you play the lottery, you're betting. And you're betting on something very real, which is an idea of your future. And you're spending your time doing that. So you're filling your future, in a sense, by doing that. Your future now is by doing that. And I'm now seeing, the course of me talking, that I picked the wrong Misaka. The Misaka I should have picked. Sorry, listeners.
We're discovering these in real time, obviously, because mine changed as well as I was talking about it.
We promise it's way easier to label them.
That's the hardest part.
It fucking is. Okay. The jester Misaka. I should have... Man. My entire life I have strived... Okay, it's getting real. Here we go. My entire life I've tried to make people laugh. Just as much as I could. Always to avoid them asking me a question that would go deeper than what I would be comfortable with. My entire life I wanted people to laugh, to avoid looking at me in the eyes. I'm not crying, that was just a croak. I just realized this could have become real deep emotional storytelling. And maybe it is. But it's been a really long time trying to do that. And it didn't occur to me until I was about 18 that I was relying on that way too much as a crutch. And that in fact the jester, as I called it, the jester Misaka that I had built, because some Misakas can also not be to your benefit, so I basically had made one during this time, was creating a real solid framework of lying to myself, not one of genuinely being concerned about the empathetic reaction of making someone laugh. Now, the cool thing about this is it's a double-sided sword. It's whatever, two-sided coin.
Double-edged sword.
Double-edged sword.
There you go.
In that being able to make people laugh is nice. And it's a really useful tool. And if you're getting mugged, if you can make them laugh, fantastic. Now, I know that sounds like a superpower, the guy that's so funny that he can just get out of any situation.
I'm sure that's happened before.
You know what? I really don't doubt it.
Yeah.
Point being, laughter is a valuable thing, and making people laugh is a valuable thing. People want to laugh, even those that are so serious and are fucking just dressed with scars. So,
I like just to caveat in real
definitely.
quick.
No, that's fine.
A couple things that I've liked so far. One, I like that you have evolved this into sort of a negative Misaka example.
Yes.
Because a thing that there is figuring out which ones you need to help grow and figure out which ones you need to
let die. Yeah.
So I like also that this example sort of gives, there was a Misaka that you created, not by choice, but out of to cope with something or as a defense mechanism because you needed it in that moment. And then as you got older, you grew out of that need.
Yeah.
So and you found in that Misaka that was ultimately bad for you eventually. Once it needed to die, it did. But you found that there was a piece of that, this making people laugh, that you could pull from this gesture Misaka that was a defense mechanism to keep people at a distance. You found a positive part, you let the gesture part die,
Yes.
and you rebirthed with this same goal, with this value piece that you found from that Misaka that needed to die, and you rebirthed it into a new iteration. So that's pretty much most of the things right there.
Totally.
Yeah.
No, we just, you're right, we totally leveraged each other there.
Yeah.
You went full positive, I went, hey, this thing is a negative thing. I also kind of like that we could, or like I could organically kind of pick a different Misaka and then realize, like, through looking back at experiences, ironically, like, be like, oh, right, the actual real Misaka here was this one. So I'll just finish by saying...
well, I'd love to hear, too,
yeah.
how you took that piece of making people laugh and how you sort of rebirthed it into another Misaka from that piece, or how that evolution happened, or how you killed the other one, or just how that so we could hear through examples of the full evolution of it.
So I was telling the story on stage and went from making the people laugh, trying to make them laugh, distancing myself because I felt uncomfortable, I felt insecure, I felt nervous being on a stage in front of a bunch of people saying things on the spot. So I tried to make them laugh, distance myself, and then I was aware of it and then pulled back and actually spoke in earnest. That's a really good metaphor for this Misaka, in that I began by trying to distance myself from others, by using laughter as a crutch, by using clown and jester and falling down and chaplaining around as a huge wall between me and people. After that night, and then the months preceding that, I started investigating more for myself why I wanted to make people laugh, and what it would feel like to sit with somebody, complete seriousness, and not try to make them laugh at all. And also try to ask myself, had I ever had one conversation where I didn't try to make someone laugh? And honestly, I look back, I fucking couldn't remember any. I'd been possessed by a clown for a really long time. Clown possession.
It's real.
It's real.
Look it up.
And I'm doing it now a little bit. I just also do like making jokes, though. But I couldn't find an example of a serious conversation I had, really. So I tried having them, and then I kept making more conversations that were bent on being serious. And then I tried leaning fully into that, and I began to see that as the serious conversations became more and more frequent, and those little moments in between when I would choose to make them laugh, because whether it be organically, because we're having fun, I'm making an observation, or I wanted them to laugh just for the sake of making them laugh, it felt good. Where before, it was just abused.
Yeah, so it's the transition of making people laugh to create distance.
Yep.
Flipping that to making people laugh to connect with them.
Exactly.
To decrease distance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that my infancy period of the Jester Misaka was trying to, obviously wanting response validation. And then as it grew and stuff, using it to distance myself from others. And then towards the end in its adulthood, it being able to maximize its use of laughter, and then finally was ready to die. And so I let it die, and now I feel comfortable with seriousness, and I feel comfortable with closeness through laughter, and I feel comfortable not having to make people laugh, and I don't feel the impulse. And what's even better is I can take that Misaka now and say, hey, I can apply this to someone who's crying. I can apply this to a conversation I want to have where, like, I'm having fun. I can use this tool now to make people laugh. Like, seeing it as a skill rather than like a means of survival, you know?
Yeah, well, it's the thing of something born out of necessity and learning how to then take control of it. Mm-hmm. It's that whole story is this thing that you crafted and honed, this muscle you're working. It's learning. You know, it's like the X-Men when like they first get their powers and they don't know how to use it. Mm-hmm. It's learning to control and all that really means, is using it less, right? Having it not always be there. So like pulling it back so that when it's necessary, when it's the right tool for the right scenario, you have it and you know how to bring it forth.
For sure.
But not using it when you don't need it because it ends up being destructive.
Would it be too much of a tangent to talk about the idea of X-Men characters learning how to use their powers and discovering their powers? I love that concept.
Sure.
Cool. Let's just pick some random... Let's pick... Okay.
I mean, in my head was Cyclops, because I feel like that's the most...
That's good.
That's the most obvious example of, like, if he opens his eyes, he shoots lasers and things explode.
Right.
But him being good at his power is using it less.
Right.
Like he puts the glasses on, or he like knows how to close his eyes, or he finds the means to be able to turn it on and off when it's necessary.
See, but that's an interesting example, because you have somebody who's like you have a telekinetic or something, and then they might over time like train their ability to use telekinesis, like how to best.
At first, it would be them like accidentally sneezing and like shooting a lamp across the room and like knocking their brother out. That's how it starts.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true. I guess I also like the idea of viewing that as a way to look at basic skills that you haven't uncovered yet.
Yeah.
Like the ability.
Go ahead. I like the fact that it's becoming more powerful by doing something less.
Mm-hmm.
Like honing something by doing it less, to me is a really interesting concept.
That's true.
Like, I guess to apply back to normal people, like you could say rage or anger could sort of be something like that. Or
mm-hmm.
if it at first, when you don't know how to control it, it controls you, and you might like fucking punch some dude in the face when you don't want to, or mm-hmm. like do something that puts you in prison. Like you have this power that's uncontrolled in you that like overtakes you, and you don't know how to do it.
That's interesting, because it's not viewing power just as something that acts upon the world, but something that is just like energy.
Sure,
how do I take said energy, said power, and convert it? And maybe my superpower ends up being able to self-control. Composure,
for
which
sure.
Is also
because like you can apply that to everything. But even with that anger, there's good places for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because it does things that like your laser vision shoots and blows everything up.
Mm-hmm.
Once you can condense that, you can use it. When you need to get farther in a workout, when you need to do something in box, when you need to go farther than you're capable of, than you think you can.
Mm-hmm.
You can turn that anger on, and you can use it as fuel or motivation
mm-hmm.
to like get one step farther than you thought you could in
mm-hmm.
any scenario. So I just think that's a cool concept of a power becoming more powerful when you constrict it.
Mm. Agreed. Do you want to go now? Do you want your Misaka to be unveiled?
Yeah, let me see. So another one I can think of is, and this is sort of the flip side of the discipline Misaka, I'm going to call it the push the baby Misaka.
Okay, wait. Are we going to have one of those rare opportunities where I get to ask you why?
Yeah.
Okay. Lay it
so a
down.
story that my parents always told to like my friends or like my girlfriends that I bring, whatever, to like summarize who I was, and now I tell it because I think it really does summarize who I was. I was in daycare. I was probably 3, and it was a daycare of like 1 to 3, or like we were like little babies and shit. There was this baby who was obviously like a year or 2 younger than me, who was like just figuring out how to walk, and it was like it's sad that like I'm proud of this story, and it like really does sum me up, but it was like just standing up and like falling down and like figuring it out, and it had like just gotten up and was like starting to walk a little bit, and I had obviously had a reputation there. So
you already had a reputation.
I guess so, because the lady saw the baby stand up and like start like kind of walking, and she looked at me and she saw me looking right at the baby, and then she looked at me, she looked at the baby, and she looked at me and he said, "Aiden, don't push that baby. If you push that baby, I'm going to put you on timeout." And then I looked up at her. I looked back at the baby. I looked up at her. Walked over. Pushed the baby. went right to the spot where there was the timeout, sat down, and put myself on timeout. So I've always weighed if the thing I'm not supposed to do is worth the consequence. And if it's worth it, I do it. So I call it the push the baby Misaka, because that's sort of like an ingrained part of my core, where I think that's where all this sort of rebellious stage of my life of like not doing what I was supposed to, doing drugs, not going to school, like all of these things were based in that, because I needed to push that metaphorical baby to see what the consequences were, to see if it was worth doing it or not. And that was something I've developed. That's probably when it's been one that's lasted through my whole life. It sort of fit the same life curve as I have, where like I've been trying to figure out ways to use that, we'll call it superpower, positively. But it started by, again, like I kind of had control of me even as I was a baby. You know, I always would be like, worth it, do it. And it didn't manifest a lot of positive experiences in my life. I had a lot of fun, but not things that developed me or gave me confidence or showed me what I was capable of or showed me I could overcome challenges. So that's one that I think I birthed the discipline responsibility Misaka in response to it, because I had, let's say this one was the left end of the responsibility spectrum. I wanted to now experience the far right end of the responsibility spectrum, right? So I had lived historically my life where I was not responsible and did whatever I wanted and weighed the consequences if they were worth it and figured out how to do all that side of it, and I found it wasn't productive. And then I think this past couple years of my life have been swinging the pendulum all the way to the other side of making a lot of unwritten rules and diet and making my bed and exercising X amount of days a week and like doing these things, and then seeing that there is value in that, but I guess it's not as fun. So I think the next thing I'm going to be doing is swinging the pendulum back and finding the middle ground in between those two of how I can use that needing to push the baby in a positive way and using it so I can sort of blend that cocktail to make something that gives me the most value and still allows me to enjoy my life, you know? Mm. So yeah, just sort of how those one Misaka is birthed from a previous one in order to try out that other side of myself to see if it exists and if I'm capable of the other side as well, and then finding balance through extremes is really a theme of my life for sure.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. I don't know if I have a lot of reflections on it other than how much I like the idea of if it's worth a consequence, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Because it makes me think that your ability to like push yourself into discipline, for instance, or push yourself through fear into experience.
That's still a form of pushing myself.
Yeah, I know. And
yeah.
Also pushing, you being the baby and pushing yourself is interesting. You know, and also on top of that, I think it's interesting that you, unlike many of the people I've met, have like very early memories, very early origin stories for ways of living later on. Like I've met plenty of people that are like, and my dad hit me and now I'm afraid of being hit by people. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like that makes sense. Or, just simple drawing of lines. But I think it's cool that in your case, you're able to, your history feels important to you.
So I think what you just said, so you described a linear history.
Yeah.
And I think mine is more of a circular history.
Yes. Again, fucking loops. Yeah. That's weird that we've come to that so many times. Okay, well,
I love full circles.
We should include them in
full
the circle
comedy.
Yep.
I love completing loops.
You've done a lot of loops. It's starting to feel like, or at least your life is meant to be full circle because your past has always come back to you, or you've come back to it. And I know that plenty of people have intended to do that, but yours feel very much that way, where you're a kid you do this exact thing, this plays out for entirety, and then you return to it to use it. You know, and I guess maybe that's a Misaka thing too, is that you make looped efforts of citing your past to improve your present moment. So I don't know. I just that's kind of the main observation I have about that.
Yeah,
you know?
I liked what you said earlier because I never really thought about it this way of pushing the baby and having to cross that line to see what the consequence is if it's worth doing it. That's still a form of pushing myself.
Yes.
Right, and I've used that thing that I have in me, like that. Like maybe that's my superpower. Maybe that's the Misaka, is the pushing myself Misaka.
Yes.
And it in its infantry, it pushed me into mischievous ways and things that got me in trouble. And now I've been shifting it as that has grown up. The pushing myself Misaka, pushing me into things that are more positive. You just had to drop a fart right there, didn't you? Oh God!
Sorry.
I was having an aha moment, and you just farted right in the middle of it.
Sorry. You said infantry, and for some reason infantry made me laugh, and then it pushed gas out. I don't know why.
You're real clappy today.
I just like that as a state.
Yeah, you're real clappy. But yeah, it's.
I think that is cool because it seems like your Misaka was labeled first as being not negative, but slightly negative in that way, right? Where it's like I don't necessarily relate to being dickish as a child, but I have been pushing myself through life from there.
Yeah.
You know?
Like I've always been pushing myself. It's just I've been trying to shift. I'm obviously, since I'm doing it as a baby, I'm obviously going to pushing myself as a part of me. So shifting the sights, shifting the scope onto some positive end, and then I'll just automatically start pushing myself in that direction. That's really what I've been working on. You gonna fart again?
No, I'm sorry. I keep on. There's like just really small things that are making me laugh.
It's like kind of mumbled pushing myself. Is that what did it?
No, you said shelf.
Pushing my shelf.
I'm sorry.
Progress.
Okay.
Pushing my shelf. I push my shelf.
There's something about that. There's something about like very like simple.
Well, I gotta stop
Yeah.
you because I found an open loop that I want to complete.
Please go.
And that brings us back to the X-Men thing of finding what your superpower is and learning to control it. I think that fits that metaphor perfectly. Where I have this thing where I'm pushing myself, and it's when I open my eyes, just like Cyclops' laser beams, it's gonna happen.
Yep.
So it's finding a way to constrict it enough or face it in the direction. So if he just faces at the bad guys and then opens his eyes, that's a positive outcome.
Oh, that's an excellent point.
Yeah, instead of just like facing it at your friend
Yeah.
or something that you're going to hurt, you face it at the bad guy, or you face it in a way where when you open your eyes and
Yeah.
it starts happening,
Make
it's
it-
in a direction that gives a
Make
positive outcome.
the baby the house invaders from Home Alone
Exactly.
and just push them down a flight of stairs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
I get what you mean. That's
Yeah.
a great way to apply it.
yeah. So it's this thing in you that you're going to do anyways that manifests itself in a negative way. How can you face it towards something positive? And I guess that's maybe the pushing myself Misaka. I don't even know exactly what it is. And again, as we say, we're just discovering all this stuff.
I
too,
think
as we
it's
go along.
I think it's the same. I think it's like the devil's advocate, Misaka. You've described devil's advocacy for yourself before and how it's been useful to you. What's cool about that is that
That's also a way of pushing myself.
Exactly.
Too. Yeah.
You're wanting to. How did you describe it? Plucking strings. What was it? Being a little fucker.
Yeah,
but
plucking strings, pushing buttons.
Yeah.
Potato.
Your inclination to do that has also caused you to be productive. So it's sort of like, sure, I will motivate myself to do the thing, but do I get to push the baby? And it's like, oh, dude, yeah. Then you're like, cool, success.
You're right.
You know?
You're right. That is a sort of a more adult way of pushing the baby. It's like it's like sneaking up behind someone and being like, "Did you think about this? Gotcha."
Yeah, exactly.
But also by doing that, I'm looking at things from other angles, and I'm teaching and it is pushing. It's pushing myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I look at it as a game or a challenge of like, can I poke a hole in this logic, or can I figure this one out, or put this puzzle together, or 100%.
Yeah, I mean, the best way to find the flaw in something is try to break it.
Yeah, and when I say devil's advocate, I do it for my own thoughts. I do it for myself. try to break my own arguments and do 100%. Yeah, I mean it's like ethical hacking.
Yes.
You know, it's breaking into Bank of America and then saying, hey, here's how you guys can get hacked.
Yep.
Here's this data.
Yep.
But they'd also ask for a bunch of money. But yeah, I'm sort of trying to ethically hack myself and other people's arguments not to break not to hurt them, but to make them better, to make me better. I want to help them craft a better thought, argument.
I guess it's
story
for you and how you regard morality for yourself. Learning how to draw that line between I could easily poke the person and cause them to shit themselves and be like, see, you can shit yourself if you get poked right there. You know, I could do that without telling them, and they probably would never forget, and that'd be really useful. The bully who thinks things through. But I could also say, hey, watch me poke myself and shit myself. Try, this is something that could happen to you. Or you could be like, hey, I promise you'll shit yourself if I touch you right here. I guess it's how do you navigate that in a way that doesn't compromise your personal values now? Where it's I'm being a little fucker to improve someone else and myself, but also to what degree will I be a little fucker? You know?
Yeah, that's that's one I've struggled with my whole life is, it all depends on the person. I really couldn't tell you a formula or a thought process I have. I think I just sort of intuit it or trust my gut on this person can handle this much. And it's one of those things by having done it my whole life, not subconsciously even, I know I know what type of person or at what level they're at and at what level I need to be at, or how hard I can push based on what type of person they are, how they're presenting themselves to me, or what their body language is, or all it's a fluid thing for sure.
This is a very teeth way of looking at of being able to size situations and people up. It's cool because by you saying, okay, this person's sensitive in these 3 areas, and this person's sensitive here, you're penetration testing.
Yeah, 100%.
That's
100%.
really cool.
And I start small and I see where it is. And again,
this is strange though. Think about this for a second.
Yeah.
Imagine there's a bully who's just been so good at bullying for his entire life that as an infant and then as a child he pushed babies over. And he got really good at pushing babies over.
Yeah.
Eventually became so good at pushing babies over that he optimized it so that it became a value system that actually was beneficial to the world and himself. Think about how interesting of a fucking hybrid superhero bully that is. You know what I mean? I'm not calling you a bully explicitly. I'm just saying.
No, but I for sure have been a bully and have bully tendencies.
Yeah.
100%.
And you've somehow converted those into, you are, and in a playful example, you are what school counselors hoped you would be. Where they're like, well, he's never going to not be an asshole. But he could be a helpful asshole.
Yeah.
I just said I'm not supposed to call you a bully. Instead, I call you an asshole. But
no, it's fine.
But,
I don't.
Yeah,
that doesn't offend me.
And kind of enjoy it, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
I don't put value propositions on true things.
Yeah.
Because it's true doesn't mean it's good or bad. It's just true. It doesn't.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you're 100% right. And that's been the biggest struggle of my life is again, when I open my eyes, it happens. I shoot the laser, right? So how can I use it in a way where it's going to benefit me and or other people, even if at sometimes it's not always enjoyable to have your buttons pushed, but I try to always have a positive motive for doing it or reason for doing it.
Right.
Because if I have to push buttons, I might as well do it in a way that can benefit someone.
Solid. I just think that's a cool idea.
It is a cool idea.
Because
it
also
really fits in
says,
the X-Men thing, the superpower thing, and constricting
really?
the power,
Yeah.
making it more powerful.
Yeah.
It completes that loop, which now makes me feel complete.
There's no more work that needs to be done. And on that note... Okay.
No, I want one more from you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I didn't want to think about my response while I was listening to you.
Yeah, which that's I did the same thing, and then you should be like, oh yeah, I had something, and then it was.
I know, which is kind of also how you have to arrive at it naturally.
You went back. You said 2 at first. There was experience and
balance.
Balance.
But I don't know if that
let's start with it, and it's obviously going to take you to somewhere
It's
you didn't
going to be
expect.
somewhere else.
So
So
you
a
might as
foreign
well
land.
just
I'm going to
start.
deal with
Yeah.
it. Here we go. The new passage. Fuck. Wrong reference. Okay. So.
Are there basements and clearings and forests in this one?
No, this one all has to do with attics. Okay.
God damn it.
I do this thing, right? I just want to open as a 20s villain. I do this thing, say.
I would have gotten away with it. Or for you meddling kids.
I pushed down this baby, right? Okay. So, for as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a jack of all trades. The first time I heard that concept, I heard it alongside Renaissance Man. I think I was in like 3rd grade. And I was like, cool,
I
Renaissance
like that you even you just naturally say that in like a cool guy way, like Renaissance man.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I said it to myself and I cracked a whip.
Yeah.
Because for some reason I was wanting to be Indiana Jones. But anyway, so in like 3rd grade, came across Renaissance Man being a concept, and I was like, that applies perfectly to what I've been trying to do for a while, which is everything. It's difficult to do it.
When are we in your life? Context us a little bit. Like what is
3rd
this?
grade.
Oh, you said that already?
Yeah.
My bad.
So I'm in 3rd grade.
I'm paying attention.
Okay. Anyway, so I'm in 3rd grade, and I hear I read about Renaissance Man. Actually, it's Leonardo da Vinci that I'm reading about, and
Literal Renaissance man.
yeah. And I was thinking to myself, this is what I've been trying to do for a while. Now I actually have a term for this. This is now all I'm going to do. Being good at everything, or just being able to do everything, was one of the leading factors that led me into not having experiences, and also to thinking a shit ton. Because if you can do everything, then cool. If you can't, then, well, you kind of lose, it feels like. It felt like to me. So,
Yeah, I want to do everything is the largest goal you can have.
Yes.
And that's the opposite of breaking it into small pieces.
So much.
And sub-segmenting and
well, the
small victories.
frustrating part of that is if you say, I want to do everything, and then you break it down into smaller pieces, eventually what we're going to come with is everyday life.
For sure. And if you say, I want to do everything, no matter how many things you can do,
Yes.
you always failed.
Yes. Every time.
Yes.
So it's the most prolific goal, and the biggest goal, and also
The worst.
goal.
Yes.
So I picked the worst goal when I was a child, and I spread myself very thin among a shit ton of categories. I tried to learn as much of things as I could, anywhere from archery to lockpicking to braiding hair to cooking specifically meats to making making pipe bombs out of match heads, but not all right. To painting, to
I was just over here lighting Furbies on fire.
to lighting Furbies on fire as a skill.
That's what I was doing in 3rd grade.
Yeah, I was really.
Yes.
God,
So if you break a Furby open, this is terrifying.
dude, you were a monster.
But I'm trying to use it for good. That's what I'm saying. If you break a Furby open, no joke.
Yeah.
I would light them on fire. Then
Yeah.
I would hammer them apart and break them. I used to
Yeah.
burn action figures on my lights. It's a lot. So you break it open. There's a legit skeletal structure inside the Furby that has no technical use to actually
Oh, I
making
am
the
familiar
Furby
with
work.
this, yeah.
Yeah. Like it has a skeleton.
Are you making bombs out of Furbies? Is that what you
I
said?
was just
You're just
breaking
exploding
them apart,
them, okay,
lighting
yeah.
them on fire and
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah, there's a legit skeletal structure inside of it that doesn't actually have any technical use to making the.
Can I
Furby
ask you real
run.
quick? Did that Furby belong to anybody?
Did it belong to anybody? We don't need to. Maybe
Did you steal people's Furbies and destroy them?
it's possible.
Jesus Christ. Okay, I'm trying to use it for good, man. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you. So Furbies can...
They have skeletal structures inside
Yeah.
for no reason other than it's fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
And I literally
It's
I
true,
remember
it is.
thinking in my little child mind being like, "Are they alive? Did I kill it?" Like I was freaking out because I
Yeah.
thought I killed a real thing. 'Cause
Yeah.
It had a skeletal structure and its pulled its little tongue out. Okay, this is not a great. This is not a great caveat.
I
You
am
were in third
clapping.
grade.
I'm so glad.
You were doing matchsticks and
Yeah.
learning all these things.
I was learning all these things, as many things as I could. And I figured out a trick to it, which is that if you just count everything as a skill, you technically can't do everything, but there's fucking infinite things. There's a certain point where I realized, oh, I can't do everything. And then I was like, well, then I just, kill myself. That's, the best. You've done everything. I'll just end it now. If I end it now, I've done everything I could possibly do, right? Because I'm dead now.
I mean, there is logic there. Yeah,
There is
I will
logic
say that.
there, but
I'm
I
not
just-
gonna say it's good logic.
No,
but
it was
yeah.
pretty shitty logic.
Yeah.
But
it's
I
logic.
just had to fit that obsession of I have to be able to do all the things I could feasibly do.
Or else there's no point.
Yeah, or not feasibly do everything. Yeah, I was a child.
Unfeasibly do.
Yeah. So I got really good at thinking about that, like exceptionally good at thinking about that until it hurt. And I prided myself on my ability to cause migraines in me by thinking about all of the things I couldn't do and could do.
It sounds like you like broke your own system there. Like you created this structure that
Yeah.
couldn't bend enough.
Yeah.
And then you snapped it in half and then
Yeah.
it had no structure.
Exactly. What I began to realize was that this Misaka that I was building was, well, it started its infancy at a very young age in me when I was probably like, I'd say I was probably like 6 when I like had, I was playing with other people's toys because I didn't have toys. Sad story.
Not lighting on fire though.
I wasn't lighting. I fucking never did that. I just never did that. I liked toys. I killed them in battle, but they like always were resurrected because they were never destroyed in their form.
Yeah.
It was such a waste of toys. Okay. Anyways, I loved them. Toys.
I love that you always have to have the last word over yourself. Like you never do it with anyone else, but always with you, you always have to have that last like.
Yeah.
And then you can go on with what you were doing.
Right.
Yeah. It's fascinating.
Okay. So, playing with these toys, and I remember playing with a friend, and we were like, okay, we're gonna play like exclusively this game that requires these action figures. And I remember being like, yes, but like in this universe, there's a wormhole or something. Maybe I didn't make a reference to a wormhole. I don't want to make it hard to believe that I was 6 and knew what things were or something. I don't want to build that notion. Let me just say this. I was a kid, and I wanted to merge all the worlds that we played in. And I wanted all the toys to be able to play together. And on my fucking plate, if I had mashed potatoes and peas, they fucking went together, man. You better believe it. Everything went together.
Right, you're writing like your own fan fiction for like all the toys and universes that you created. Yeah.
Yes. So everything was included and had to be. And I never really had much. I never really had much. So the things I had, I made count, sort of, but also I didn't really care about them because I couldn't have all the things I wanted. It wasn't about being rich. It wasn't about having all the resources in the world. It was being able to do with all the things I could. But anyways, that Misaka grew more and more over time, and eventually I reached like middle school and high school when I started building a lot more skills and realized, shit, I'm really good at nothing. Because I remember like seeing somebody shoot a basketball, and I was like, that's cool. I tried that too. I also could shoot a basketball. I can't make it, but I do that. I can also play baseball, tennis, cross.
Yep.
Fucking.
Well, this brings me to the second part of the jack of all trades, master of none.
Master of none.
Yeah.
So I began to realize I was a master of none, and it wasn't until I started writing that I realized I was pretty good at writing. But then the trouble started to merge into writing. My Misaka, my master of none is a better way to describe it. Misaka started as a master of none, I think. I mean, well, it started as a rising jack of all trades, became a master of none. I started writing, and then I realized
It's the birth and death.
yes, within it. But there was like, I don't know. This one's a bit difficult to encapsulate, but I'll try to.
Yeah.
I also like that we're building Misakas on the spot. So I remember writing and thinking, oh, I can write about anything. Also, I can be really good about writing. I can be really good at writing about any topic. Also, this is a skill. Holy shit. A skill that can encapsulate other skills? How have I not thought about embedding skills in each other? What the fuck is wrong with me?
Interesting.
So I started doing that, and I started to realize, oh, I'm really good at writing.
Yeah. So it's instead of learning tennis, learning how to cook all the meats, as you say, instead of learning how to do all these things, you could write about all these things, which gives you the conceptual learning of them, and you're also mastering a skill, a singular skill.
Exactly. So I started to realize that skill building was a structural process. It was a hierarchical process that you could pick one skill and then it could have a huge number of branches, and that suffices. Let's still deal with the problem, and still do. of wanting to be able to do everything. And it still kind of haunts me. But more or less that Misaka ended up dying through the course of me writing. And what took its place was a kind of a vibe towards being a jack of all trades through writing. But instead of being a master of none, I always would go back and say, I have one thing, which is I can write. No matter what. Even if I'm good at it or not. It's a skill that I have honed. And I have that. And then, of course, I added coding and all this other stuff. But that is still the one that I have. And I will tell you, this is a difficult segment on my end because I started with Master of None. I started Jack of all trades, became Master of None, and then kind of combined the two in such a way where I compromised, which was the anathema of my childhood.
It's kind of the same thing as I said with the push the baby and the discipline, where this pendulum swings out too far one way.
Yep.
You swing it all the way to the other side to see what that's like.
Yep.
And then once you know where the ends are, you can find the middle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think I'm still getting closer to the middle. It's hard because
the hardest part.
So much.
It's easy to just swing the pendulum back the other direction and then swing it back the other direction.
It's easier to be. And I remember a time when I was an acceptance of being not good at anything. I gave up all the skills, I threw them all away, and then the one thing I was really good at was self-medicating. Using substances. I was okay with about that for about a year.
Same.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So for about a year I was really good at using
professional.
drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, fucking I had all my things down. And I was okay with that during that time. Because it was kind of a given up period. And I remember kind of phoenixing out of that with writing again. And it saved me again in that way. Maybe it's my writing Misaka.
So what it's sounding like to me, and I'm completing a loop with this, so it makes me really happy.
Yeah.
So it sounds like your superpower is conceptualizing.
Yes.
Or sort of the thought experience, right? So imagination is your superpower.
Mm-hmm.
So you found that you were able to imagine what it was like to play tennis and be able to write about it as if you were a master of tennis. So you sort of mastered it through your imagination. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you've been just building this imagination Misaka, and you tried to do it through experience, but it wasn't the right power. It wasn't connecting, and your imagination took you to somewhere dark because you weren't using the right system, the right tools that you had. And I'm sure your imagination has taken you to a lot of dark places before.
Sure.
So you're going to imagine whether you like it or not, right? So that's sort of the Cyclops when you open your eyes.
Yeah.
So it's again framing where you can face your imagination, so it's going to do something beneficial for you.
Really helpful. That's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, and it's the back to the Cyclops X-Men thing where you.
I like that's been our resting point for this conversation.
It's what's looped everything back to. It just makes sense.
I fucking needed something to loop back to.
Yeah, so your imagination, just like me pushing myself is my superpower, your imagination is yours.
Right.
And facing it in the right direction, so when you open your eyes and the laser beam shoots out, it ends up somewhere positive.
For sure.
Has been what that is for you as well.
Yeah, again, I picked a different Misaka. But I'm satisfied with that. I'm more satisfied with the imagination one because I don't think it was a jack of all trades master of none Misaka. I think I was on the process of becoming more imaginative. Or maybe even just...
It's almost like we need to create a name for these, which are our core Misakas or something like that.
Yes, that's good.
You had a jack of all trades Misaka that turned into a master of none Misaka.
Right.
That was a whole life.
Who are the longer... What are the longer lasting...
Yeah,
which Misakas have lives within them?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that might overcomplicate. That might
again, they can all be living at once. You can have multiple alive at once.
Yeah.
You don't have to have... But I think we just discovered this core Misaka that...
For both of us, for sure.
That is going to... That lives and dies with us. And from that core, it's almost like it's the energy source that it's like the Big Bang that's constantly exploding, and all these other Misakas are coming out of it in their different forms, and it's like our energy source that allows us to create all these other Misakas.
I'm writing it down.
You're writing it down. It's just something. Yes, it's a new piece that we never really thought about.
For sure. Well, again, the cool thing again, we're evolving this while talking about it
As it goes.
as we started. I like that. So what do you think?
Yeah.
Cool.
Is that enough of a bombshell?
I think that counts. It feels positive.
It's weird having a positive bombshell.
I know.
I guess that's the point, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I couldn't think of anything not cool.
On us being scared of a positive bombshell. We'll catch you guys on the next one.
Yeah.